This is the fourth session in a series of 5 about research in communities of meaning. It was conducted by a team sponsored by the University of Divinity and the Christian Research Association. The speaker for this session is Dr. Enqi Weng, who is a teaching fellow in the School of Communications and Creative Arts at Deakin University. She completed her doctorate at RMIT University, and she's currently involved in a variety of research projects on religion, migration, race and ethnic relations, and communication. The focus of this presentation is on digital communication among retired people.
Hi, my name is Enqi Weng, and this is a paper in looking at digital participation, meaning making among older Australians, and this paper is part of the Communities of Meaning project. My area of research is at the intersection of sociology and media studies, and so that's my focus for this particular project and this paper that I will be presenting on. So this paper is a draft, and so it's something that I plan to work towards a journal article. So I will walk you through some of the literature review, the kind of theories that underpin how I will be looking at this particular paper. I will talk you through the research questions as well that is guiding how I will be approaching this paper. And I'll present to you some preliminary findings as well, just to give you a sense of what we are seeing in the data. So the context that we really find ourselves in when we're talking about digitality, and especially the uptake by older Australians in sort of like getting onto digital platforms is really a post-pandemic context. And we see that, there's been quite a significant engagement with all forms of things that are digital. And that also was something that we began to see, especially within religious communities, when digital technology was adopted to maintain connections during lockdown. And there was this massive shift to do so. So we not only see that in churches, in religious communities, but we also actually see that in social service provision. So I was involved in a research project looking at social service provision for multicultural communities, and there was also a lot of talk about the challenges of changing to digital service delivery and all of that, and the provision of devices and so on. So there was this massive uptake of the digital during the pandemic, and even those that were initially quite hesitant or kind of refused to get onto the digital kind of have to go past that hurdle and to come on board that. So I'm drawing quite a lot on Heidi Campbell's work here. So Heidi Campbell is a leading scholar in digital religion, and she has done quite a bit of work in this space in studying the uptake of the digital within churches in particular. And this is just one of the report that she came up with, so Campbell and Jordan in 2022, in this observation of a generational digital divide within churches. And there were two terms that she came up with that kind of demonstrate this sort of reluctance and hesitancy. And so digital reluctance and digital hesitancy are terms that were that came out of this report. And it was largely around how older congregants really took up these digital tools primarily to stay connected to their loved ones whom they cannot physically see because of conditions that occurred during the pandemic. And on the other hand, the younger congregants were able to utilize their digital literacy and their technological skills to support and to help out these older members and to kind of help them upskill and to teach them how these different technologies and software would work. Now, I'm also situating this particular paper in a kind of broader context of digital divide. And so that is a kind of a broad, a very broad term that really largely describes the gap between those who have access to digital technologies and those that do not. Now, this sort of divide is not just around digital literacy, but it's also around the actual physical access to these technologies, right? And we can also think about digital divide in terms of our mindset around how we want to engage digitally. So all of that could be seen as a kind of a broad understanding of digital divide. Now, I'm also going kind of further back into, I guess, a bit of a history of what is the digital, and I think more recently we would think about it in a few decades ago when we have the internet, and there was quite a bit of a kind of a hype perhaps around how promising it is. It is much more inclusive or democratic, that all of us can come together in a kind of an equal way to participate on this platform. However, in much more recent times, we've had we are seeing broadly within the trends of media studies, scholars more interested in issues around the darker side of the internet. So issues that we're facing around polarization of views, the hyper connectivity of all of us as a global village, but also what that means when we are exposed to too much information and we have to have greater digital literacy to discern what is true, what is false, what is misinformation, and also other issues around technological colonialism, which is where these tech giants have all these power around the data that they have and what are the issues that might be related to that. So that's kind of the broader issues in media studies very broadly as a discipline. But what that also means for us in terms of thinking about this digital divide is that there are kind of thoughts around how do we engage digitally. Does it lead to some forms of digital disconnection as well? And I'm actually, because I'm teaching media and communications at Deakin University, and I see a lot of younger generations talking about kind of very deliberate digital disconnection, and so that is in fact also a kind of a new phenomenon that's occurring, that very voluntary sort of choice to disconnect digitally. So we can kind of see digital disconnection as a form of a negative choice, in that there's a very deliberate, active decision not to use, not to participate, as we can see from Count 2021 here. That this is a particular new movement, and it's around choice making. It's around making decisions whether they want to connect or to disconnect from particular social connections. And sometimes this digital disconnection in this context of hyperconnectivity, of being overwhelmed with information, of content, of data, and all that, this digital disconnection could actually be a way to make choices around which are the relationships to prioritize, or which are the things that people want to do to maybe maximize other aspects of their life. So we can think about this disconnection also actively, but it also could be done passively as well. So they're both possible. We can also see this disconnection existing in a form on a continuum. So there are these variations of that encompass both active and passive forms of disconnections, that are just, a withdrawal or opting out, or just not engaging or unplugging. And so Kuntzman and Miyake have kind of see this as a continuum of digital disconnection. Digital disengagement. And this also means that there are a continuum of multiple possible effects here in parallel to this continuum of digital disconnection. Now, this variety of disengagement could also be seen, from a generational perspective. So there are generational differences in how these disconnections are being managed. Now, I'm also turning to literature around like the study of health, gerontology, and to think about how we age well within places, which is where it's kind of bringing relevance to this project as well, in terms of thinking about the role of organizations and communities in shaping meaning making for older Australians. So there's quite a bit of work in this space in terms of that place-based residential social network kind of focus. So I'm drawing on this concept of aging in networks here to encapsulate not just that physical aspect, the physical social networks, but also those that extend outside of the immediate place of residence. And this is drawing from literature from Asia, from Singapore, where actually it also not just looks at physical locality, but also the digital as well. And in fact, we also have other literature that demonstrate that there are older adults who are very willing to adopt digital technologies to overcome different forms of barriers, to maybe communicate with their transnational families, with interest-specific communities as well. So it's not a kind of a sweeping thing, or not a broad stroke thing where older individuals are not willing to adopt these forms of technologies. So the research question for me for this paper is quite simply, what is the role of the digital in older Australians' meaning making or sense of mattering? So sense of mattering is a concept that we are kind of thinking about in terms of who matters and to whom we matter, or in this case, how older Australians matter to communities, to families, to organizations, or what sort of significance can they find at this phase of life. So some preliminary findings that I will kind of talk you through thematically, just mapping out some of the concepts that I've demonstrated to you in this presentation so far. Now, I guess to start with, we did interview 71 older Australians who are kind of in the various stages of retirement, semi-retired, post-retired, a good balance of men and women. They were recruited from churches, but also various neighborhood sort of communities, secular organizations as well. So I'm not able to present all 71 because not all of them spoke about the digital aspects of their connections, and all of these names are sort of replaced with pseudonyms as well. So just you're aware of how I'm presenting these data. So we can see here that for many of these older Australians, the digital really facilitates connections. It can be seen as a great and fantastic tool for maintaining connections, especially during a pandemic. And so even though face-to-face interactions are valued, digital communications do offer these unique benefits by keeping connections alive in these very small ways. So we can see here from Bethany that online has been really wonderful. She has been able to catch up with family online every week, and she talks a lot about Zoom. Her family is not, physically close to her, but that Zoom allows her to have and maintain those connections. And Zoom has also facilitated church service for her and opened up opportunities and time and space for her to talk to people and maintain connections. And so we can see here from Paul that even though face-to-face interactions are valued, Zoom helps to maintain that relationship. So he sees that as a good advantage. Now, for some people like Faye, having the digital actually even is a bit of a lifeline because of where they are. And I should also kind of mention that the people that were interviewed, not just by myself, all of us as a team, we interviewed people who live in urban, regional, rural areas. And so for Faye, who does not have who lives in a rural sort of area, life can be quite isolating. And in fact, having access to the digital, having access to Zoom is a bit of a lifeline. So as you can see from what she says here, if it's not for her husband, she would be just listening to the cows, the kookaburras, the cows, the possums. There's really nothing. And so even as she would to travel locally, she doesn't feel like she fit in. She doesn't fit in. And so what does she have here? Even though the internet is expensive, she got onto it because if not, she had nothing else. And so it's actually really important for some of these older Australians living in spaces and places where there is very minimal social interactions. Now, of course, there are others who are less enthusiastic about the digital, but some of them do make baby steps here, and we can see that for Chloe. So we can see sort of like these evidences of digital reluctance or hesitancy or forms of disconnection. And we can see that Chloe, is historically quite technologically phobic, as she says, like even with phones. And she cannot see herself even calling people up. It has to be face to face for her. So technology is really something that is still very much unfamiliar for her. She doesn't quite trust it. But even then, this particular interview that was documented was her third attempt at Zoom. So you can see sort of like people on these different continuum of this digital disconnection here. You can see where Chloe is at. Now, there are also other expressions of this hesitance, reluctance, or kind of emotions around this disconnection. And from Anne here, we see her saying that, through these interactions, you can kind of have these illusions of the kind of people that you interact with. But you can have this mental image of who they are based on your online interaction with them. You might imagine them a foot taller, or that their online persona might be something, but when they actually meet them in person, it's something else altogether. And so Anne was kind of expressing this dissonance between what she was feeling in terms of her interaction with these people online and offline, and how she feels that she is talking to a product of her imagination, and she finds that so fascinating, but also very powerful. And we can also see here from June this sense of the different kinds of communities that that she has constructed but also joined in. So June shares with us that in these two quotes here, that she actually formed a Facebook Messenger group, to kind of support her at a very difficult time of her life when her husband passed away. And it became this group where, she really kind of, in her own words, right, the space where she could kind of dump all her woes and sorrows, and a place for her to connect. And this was made up of a group of very close friends for her to be able to do that in a very safe way. But at the same time, she is also simultaneously in a group that is made up of thousands of people from all over the world. And she is clearly not possible for her to know them all individually, but she finds that when she is struggling, this is a group that she can easily access any time of the day, and that she can receive instantaneous gratification in terms of, like, someone can support her or encourage her. And so, in fact, there are these different forms of connection and disconnection simultaneously with groups, with a small group that is made up of people that she constructed, that actually eventually she kind of stopped this group because she felt like, she could no longer connect with them. And there's simultaneously this really large group that she could, somehow connect with, even though they are like away. Sorry, they're not immediately her friends, in real life friends, but yet she feels this connection with them. So when we think about aging in digital networks, we also see people like Bob, for instance, connecting with community groups online based on very specific special interests. So Bob here is really interested in Eurovision song contest, and that's where he has these communities that are built around his interests. Now, there are also many others, that just too many of them to put them all here, that are not featured here, that really have a way of maintaining transnational connections with their friends, their family. And I guess what is interesting for us when we look at Bob, but also June, is that whilst for many of the older Australians who kind of express digital hesitancy or kind of reluctance, they actually largely refer to Zoom in their experiences of the digital, and my sense is that it's largely because of a pandemic uptake sort of thing. Whereas we see others who are, have very specific interests, those who have transnational family and friends, and they actually have resources or access to, and in fact refer to other types of digital tools like social media, for instance, like Facebook and WhatsApp, and mentions of all these different communities that are built around all of these different types of devices. So I guess, a bit of a summary or preliminary reflections here in terms of, hopefully you would have seen, these continuum of connections, but also disconnections based on different types of technologies and different types of communities of meaning for them, and the role of the digital in community building, in maintaining relationships, in finding new communities, but also maintaining connections with existing friends and family. And I think perhaps one of the key things that has come up is obviously around digital literacy. And for me, as an exploration around that, and in terms of the different levels of digital literacy, and how that also adds to this continuum of connection and disconnection that are explored and noted by older Australians in our interviews. So if you're interested in some of the references that I have included in the slides, these are something for you to look up. Thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, you know where to reach me. My email is in the first line. Thank you.